guys, now we are in the tomato beds. These tomatoes are quite active and mature. They're about 3.5 to 4 months old, I'm going to say. We've had a couple of really good harvests, and they're actually still producing pretty well. So I'm going to show you some tips on how to have the best tasting tomatoes ever. What you want to do naturally is train the tomato plant to grow up vertically, as tall as it will grow. As you can see, this one behind me is close to 6 feet. I'm 5'7" and it towers over me. And it's got tomatoes hanging all over it. I'm going to show you how to do that with this one right here in front of me. Okay, so I'm going to just press this into the ground here, as you can see, and I'm going to press it into the dirt as hard as I can so it's nice and strong, because this plant is going to depend on it to stand up. Okay, now before we stake it, we're going to get rid of the extra foliage that's unnecessary. What it does is it slows down the production of the plant. That's why this plant doesn't have any tomatoes on it, because all it has is a bunch of foliage and it's sucking all of the energy out of the plant. The first key to pruning tomato is looking for the suckers. A sucker is going to be usually pretty easy to find. I find it easy to give a name for location purposes. So the main stalk, stem of your plant, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the thickest one at the bottom down here. This is going to be the body. Okay? Now, the body of the tomato plant is what we want to stake onto the bamboo. So we're going to pull that as close to the bamboo as we can. It's kind of growing at a curve, which is nice and beneficial for me, so I can put it here and it can rest. This portion, as you can see, grew in between, and it's a sucker, and it's turned into its own tomato plant. And it's taking away all of the energy from our main source. So we want to prune that off. And I know it seems like a lot, but once we do this, it will increase the flavor, and it also increases the nutrition. So when you have the arm and then you have anything growing on the inside of it, it becomes a sucker, and the sucker becomes its own plant now. So it's not only happened here, but it's happened here as well. So naturally what you want to do is you want to remove the middle part, the part that's growing in the armpit. Okay? And that needs to just be removed, or like I said, you can turn it into another plant by propagating and putting it in some water until it roots. So just to show you up close what the sucker looks like. And when they're small, they pop right off with your thumb, okay? And you don't have to use a pruner. You just come in with your thumb. There's another one there. And pull it out, okay? And then that's kind of just a close-up of what you're looking at. Okay, and then anything that's damaged also needs to come off. Same with your cucumbers. When they are brown, curling, yellow, damaged at all, you trim the whole thing off, okay? Now you take this piece, get it as close to your pole as you can. And because I have a majority of this already staked to this smaller pole and the plant next to it, I'm gonna go ahead and remove that old tie, and I'm gonna remove it from this other plant. Untangle it a bit here. Now we're gonna put those together. We're gonna get this piece and we're gonna get this piece here, and I'm gonna tie them together. Sometimes it's difficult to tie your tape one-handed, but the more experience you have, the easier it will become, and you just kind of use your thumb there, pull it around. Try not to let it go, because the chances of you breaking things after you've let it go and reattach them are pretty high. If you do break it, don't be alarmed. They will grow back. Now, everything that is looking like this, or it's been trimmed off now, gave me about 10 tomatoes. And it will keep doing so until it's done. And this thing can keep producing for maybe another 6 to 8 weeks. And then what we'll do is we'll plant again for the fall. So tomato is actually a very long lasting crop if you grow it the right way. And it will start producing flowers. And this one actually has some flowers. So this is a good thing to show you. Those flowers right there, they're tiny. As long as they get pollinated by a bee or a hummingbird or whatever, ants even pollinate, they're going to turn into tomatoes. And they're going to grow fast and ripen and taste amazing, because there's not a lot of energy spent down here. All the energy is going to be right here on this plant. And another thing that increases pollination in your garden that I wanted to point out to you is planting flowers nearby. And I plant basil near my tomatoes because basil has flowers. and it increases the flavor. If you're a basil lover, if you plant them right next to your tomatoes, they're gonna taste amazing. But another thing to do is plant really bright colored flowers. And I chose zinnia because not only are they beautiful and they attract butterflies, bees, you name it, all the pollinators love this flower, but they love the heat and they're easy to grow and they need very little water and they just grow. And they reseed themselves naturally as well, just like the marigold that I had showed you before. I'm gonna step over here and show you how to do that. What you do is you allow the flower to dry up. And this is a great example right here. Once they look like this, you're gonna go ahead and pull the dead head off. Okay, now this is gonna be the center of the flower. And I know this doesn't look like much, but those tiny white flakes, they're not actually tiny, they're about mid-size, yeah, are seeds. And so you're going to save these, put them in a jar, an envelope, however you want to, save them. I prefer little sealed envelopes that don't allow air in. Or you can use a jar, I've also seen used, but keep in mind jars sometimes will bring humidity and you don't want humidity when you're saving seeds. This also can just be sprinkled right back into the ground along the areas where you have irrigation. You're gonna just barely cover it back up and within a week those will germinate and we have a whole new bed of zinnia growing back. And you wanna keep the cycle of flowers growing in your garden because that's going to bring more pollinators to your garden, and without pollination, we don't have vegetables. So I wanted to show you now what to do with a plant that's just overgrown and bushed out, because a lot of you may have this in your yard if you planted tomatoes a couple months ago and did not know that you should prune them like this. As you can see, it's fallen over. It's very big. It's actually quite large. So I'm afraid if I stand up with it, it will bust in places where we don't want it to break. So I'm gonna lean down and I'm gonna do this as carefully as possible without breaking a lot of it. It does have a few tomatoes on it. So if they fall off, what we'll do is we'll just harvest them. But we're gonna try and leave them on there so they can ripen on the vine because it tastes better when they ripen on the vine. And by the way, these are yellow pear cherry tomatoes, if you were wondering what kind they are. It's an heirloom cherry tomato. Okay, now this down here is going to be our main stalk of the plant. And these are suckers. So these are coming off. So I'm gonna grab it here and I'm gonna trim those off as close to the main body of the plant as I can. These get tossed or saved if you want to propagate them. We're gonna remove all the extra foliage that we see. And I'm gonna do this kind of slowly and easy, the best way that I can. Now, here's a great example of what the sucker is again. Here's our main, here's our arm, here's our armpit. Sucker needs to come out. I'm gonna trim that off, okay? I have a little bit of room to pull this up now, but what I'm gonna do before that is actually trim off some more of this down here. These are all suckers and extra foliage that we don't need. It's just pulling energy off of this plant that's not necessary. I'm gonna go ahead and take that one off there too since it is yellow and browning. All the yellow browning leaves come off. Okay, this is coming off. This part I already clipped, so we're gonna pull that through. All right, again, we have two branches that have created from the bottom base of this plant. I'm not gonna remove one of them because of how mature they both are. So we're gonna allow both of them to stay and we're gonna stake them up. So what you're gonna do is carefully grab the top of the plant, the sturdiest portion of the plant that you can. I already put the stake in, so all we gotta do now is get it to lean on the stake if possible without damaging it too much. I'm gonna try and find some clearance here at the top where I can get a good place to tie it to the stake without harming it. Okay, it's gonna be pretty difficult to do by just the main area. So what we're gonna do is actually kind of pull it together. We'll get it tied, then we'll go back after it's tied and trim the things away that we don't need. Okay, so you're gonna hold on to that like that. Drop that glove for a second, pull out a piece of tie tape here. Or if you were smart, you'd have your tie tape ready and trimmed off first. Okay, so we're gonna pull this around. Give it a good snug knot to kind of keep it in place. Probably gonna wanna go around one more time because this is awfully heavy and it may fall back down if it's not secure at the top. So a couple little knots like that. Not too tight. Same thing with cucumbers, they do need to breathe. Okay, now that we've got it up off the ground, that's an A+, successful in that area, but we've got a big mess down here that we want to clean up. So we're just going to take away everything extra. So this is going to come off, both of those pieces there. It's already damaged, it's already broken. Okay, this here is going to come off as well. Now this is going to come up, and we're going to pull this to the top, and we're going to tie that up as well. But before I do that, I'm going to prune back all this extra stuff at the bottom, all this extra foliage. This tomato's overripe, so I'm going to just take that off. Take this off too. We want this to be as bare as possible down here at the bottom. So you're just going to kind of clean it up as you go, just like that, okay? Now with this one, since I can't really see any further up above me, I'm going to tie it right here at the bottom. And then it will also give it some more support if it has a tie at the bottom and at the top. It's not going to want to lean over anymore. These ones are all edible, so we'll save those. They're falling off as we're working here. Don't throw those out. I prefer to let mine ripen on the vine. This is what they'll look like if they are not ripened on the vine. This will ripen on your countertop though in about 5 days. Okay, now once we're up here at the top, we're just going to clean up the jungle a little bit. So, just like I said below, everything that's considered a sucker and taking energy away from our main plant needs to go. All right, it's going to be kind of up to you what you want to take off and what you want to leave, but now at least it's up off the ground and you're going to have more production and you're less susceptible to disease and bugs. Everything that's laying on the ground is always going to be prone to disease and insects, and we don't want that. So I think that pretty much covers this. You're going to want to eventually clean this up, so you just keep on snipping away, and all of this will eventually come off until you have main branches with flowers, and that's all you want to leave. And I think leaving it leaning a little bit like that is going to be okay. We'll let it kind of adjust. We don't want to do too much to it right now because we just took off about half of the plant. We don't want to do too much at once. What we'll do is give this a couple of days to adjust like this. We'll come back out, we'll do some more maintenance in a few days. We'll remove any of the dead foliage, and we're probably going to need to restake it because it will grow in the next few days taller. And so what we'll do is we'll take the top and we'll pull it up and we'll retie it. But for right now, I'm going to leave it the way it is and let it do its thing and adjust. Okay, I wanted to show you when is the right time to harvest. On this one here, they are very, very close. And if you're in a hurry or you're like going to take a trip or you want to give these to somebody, you can go ahead and pull these now. These ones will ripen in just a few days, and this one is ready to eat, and this one's ready to eat. But if you have no hurry, you want to go ahead and let this ripen on the vine, so leave that there, and we will move down to this end of the plant and show you a great example of ready to pull cherry tomatoes that you can pop in your mouth right now. When I prune them, when I harvest them, I like to take the whole entire vine that it's growing on, because that actually keeps them together nicely, as you can see, and it keeps them fresher. So say you wanted to store them for a couple of days and not use them. This one actually needs to be eaten now. This one's already getting sun-dried, but these two are perfect. The vine keeps them fresh. So especially if you harvest them like this, you want to keep that vine on. But this vine keeps the taste, the flavor intact, and the freshness intact. So that's the way you should cut them. Don't pull the tomato off individually, take the whole vine with it. As you can see, they can get up to 6 feet tall this way and keep producing for much longer than they will when they bush out. I hope you've learned a lot today, and we hope that you will like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more useful gardening tips.